All this boy did was glance at something he was never meant to see, and when he got home, his mother told him he was already dead. It turns out there's a eerie legend in Japan that says you must never go outside when it's raining, because that's when the foxes come to find their mates, and they don't want humans to see them. But the boy didn't take it seriously. Just as his mother turned to go back inside, he ran off into the forest all by himself, thinking it was all just a story to scare kids. But just then, a thick fog suddenly rolled in over the forest, and strange sounds began to echo through the air. Soon, a procession of human-like figures with fox faces appeared, and that's when the trouble really began. Upon seeing the fox procession, the little boy was so terrified he quickly hid behind a tree. The group carried paper lanterns in their hands. The bride was dressed in white, and the groom wore a red headscarf. They kept a constant watch on their surroundings, as if determined to keep this wedding hidden from prying eyes. As the procession drew nearer, the ethereal music grew clearer. Mike hid behind the tree, afraid to make even the slightest sound. He shifted his body as the procession moved, afraid the foxes would spot him. And the foxes, in turn, were equally afraid of being seen by humans. Just as the procession was about to pass him by, the fox-faced people suddenly turned their heads toward the tree. Their eyes met Mike's, and he was so terrified he ran away. He thought he'd be safe once he got home, but his mother had been waiting at the door for quite some time. Her gaze was no longer stern as before, but filled with sorrow. She took out a small knife and handed it to Mike. It turned out that while Mike was spying on the fox's wedding, the fox's messenger had already come to their house to lodge a complaint, and left the small knife behind. He must use this dagger to atone for his sin with his life. Otherwise, the enraged foxes would drown them all. He begged his mother desperately to spare him, but she remained unmoved and shut the door. Mike couldn't believe his eyes. The young Mike couldn't understand why his usually loving mother would personally push him toward death, but thinking that sacrificing himself could save everyone, he still clutched the small knife tightly, and, following his mother's instructions, set off toward the valley. Here, flowers bloomed across the mountains and fields, and a brilliant rainbow arched across the sky. This breathtaking scenery stood in stark, bitter contrast to the boy's tragic mission. He knew that the other end of the rainbow was his final destination, and the home of the foxes. No sooner had he entered than he was stopped by the fox-faced men. Seeing this uninvited guest who had disrupted their wedding, the Fox King flew into a rage. He loudly accused Mike of his crimes, rebuking him for his snooping as a disrespect to the gods. He could no longer hold back his tears and began to sob on the spot. Just as the king was about to sentence him to death, the fox princess suddenly intervened. She pointed out that Mike was still just a child, and since he had the courage to own up to his mistakes, he deserved a second chance. Hearing the princess's words, the Fox King felt ashamed. With a wave of his little hand, he pardoned Mike, and ordered his subjects to dance in celebration, as a gesture of goodwill toward this brave child. Indeed, acknowledging one's mistakes is what matters most. The Fox King did not forgive him for peeking, but rather recognized the courage he showed in taking responsibility at such a young age. Instantly, the entire valley was filled with joy. He never imagined that this journey of atonement would not only save him from disaster, but also lead him to unexpectedly befriend these mysterious foxes. And so the story ends.